Now I had my hands full with a rat's nest of tangled Christmas lights when the receptionist, Katie, poked her head into the garage. "Circle up, boys. Time to draw straws." "A little late in the season for the Dumonts," I said. For reference, we're a roofing company, but in the wintertime, when it's harder to do roofs, we hang Christmas lights and take them down for people who don't care to do it themselves. My team stopped their work, setting down their storage totes and giant plastic candy canes, and came to crowd around the little coffee bar I'd built in our garage bay. Katie held up a cup of wooden stirring sticks. "Come on, don't be shy." She went around the group, all bundled up in paint-spattered workwear, letting each employee take one. Marco sucked his teeth. "Looks like I'm on the naughty list this year." Chris, the first official victim of the Dumont house, elbowed Marco in the ribs. "Nice knowing ya." Chris had a job site injury at the Dumont house. A year after Chris's concussion, another employee broke his back at the very same property. We've been pulling straws for the job ever since. "Should be too. Who else has it?" Katie asked. "That'd be me." I held up my stick marked with a black tally. Every year, I took part in the Dumont drawing as a show of faith to my staff. But this was the first year I'd actually had to go out on the job. "Hey boss, if you don't make it back, I'll take great care of the place, I promise." Chris flashed a wide smile. "All right, smartass, you can finish untangling while I'm gone." I motioned back to the mess of wires and bulbs I'd been wrangling. "Now I've entertained enough of your superstition for the day." Admittedly, I did feel a bit uneasy about heading over to the job. Roofers aren't exactly known for believing in luck or curses, but the boys certainly had a reason to be wary. Most visits to the Dumont house involved at least one close call. If there was even a scrap of evidence the job site was unsafe, I would have ditched the client. Trouble was, everything was easily chalked up to honest mistakes and slip-ups made by employees rushing to get home for the holidays. Even Chris told me he long suspected the fear around the house was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course, that didn't explain everything. Now I heard it happened in 1929. Marco broke the silence from the passenger seat. Owner lost everything in the crash. Bank was foreclosing. Poor bastard decided to hang himself from the banister to tank the real estate value. Family found him swinging there on Christmas morning. "Is that the version going around these days?" I asked. "Why? What'd you hear?" I bit my lip. I knew I shouldn't indulge. Heard it was an accident back in the 70s. Didn't quite feel right to decorate while their kid was over in Saigon. But when he shipped back last minute, they rushed to decorate the whole place in one night for Christmas. Dad slipped off the roof and broke his neck. Real tragedy. I don't know. Me personally, if I fell off the roof on accident, I wouldn't want to hang around haunting the place forever. Especially if it was a job site. No offense, boss. Yeah, none taken. I'd hope you could find something better to do with your afterlife. Now I turned into the horseshoe driveway and pulled in front of the old Victorian. The house wasn't huge, so much as tall. The turret rose above the wraparound porch from the left side, easily stretching 3 or 4 stories before coming to a point. "Think we'll need the big ladder for that?" Marco asked. "No doubt." He grinned. "This is going to look amazing." "Glad I've got you in the Christmas spirit, Marco," I said. I grabbed the clipboard propped against the center console and hopped out of the truck. Marco beat me to the bed and was already unloading our equipment. "Now I'll get us set up out here, boss. You go take care of the easy stuff inside." He cracked a smile. The doorbell sounded like something an old cathedral would use to call the town to mass on Sunday morning. I almost felt bad for disturbing the ancient-looking man that eventually answered it. He looked as though he'd been tall once, but shrank with age. I could count the wispy white hairs that remained atop his head. "Mr. Dumont?" I asked. "Yes." He spoke with a soft voice that still had some strength to it. "I'm Chuck, from the Holiday Decorating Company," I said, but he still seemed confused. "You called us here to do your Christmas lights for you, didn't you?" A look of recognition crept across his face. Oh, how lovely. This is what I was thinking. I held out the clipboard with the sketches of what I'd planned out back in the shop. Pretty similar to what we did last year. I thought it would be nice to warm things up a bit with some more color. He squinted at the page, nodding in silent agreement as a smile lit up his face. He handed it back to me. Beautiful, but you can leave the top alone. He tapped the clipboard with a bony finger. That's so high up. I wouldn't want you boys to hurt yourself. Nonsense, I said. Did he know about the rumors too? I thought to myself, however. It's no trouble at all. That was a lie, but that's what I told him anyways. But leaving the upper floor of a house unlit would make the whole thing look sloppy. I wasn't putting my name on something like that. So I told him we'd get started right away. The man caught me by my wrist as I turned back to the porch. Just be careful out there, eh? No, of course, sir. Thank you. I made it 2 steps out the front door before Marco called out for me. Hey, Chuck. Sounded like he was around the side of the house. Yeah? I started walking around the porch. The wood felt spongy beneath my boots. Bring the A-frame ladder, would you? What for? Just come here. I didn't have to look far. The ladder had been propped open and set up right beside the edge of the porch. I leaned out from beneath the awning to grab it. Whoa, Chuck, what are you doing? It was Marco, and he was above me. Aren't you... I stopped mid-sentence to poke my head around the side of the building. The side yard was empty, save for the creeping weeds. I stepped out from under the porch and spotted Marco, sitting with his legs dangling over the edge of the roof. What are you doing up there? You told me to go up and look for a place where we could hide the wires. He pointed up at the turret. You know, you pulled the ladder about a half second before I stepped down on it. Could have killed me. I'm sorry. I thought you were calling me from around the back of the house. Marco didn't answer. He just shot me this confused look, like he wasn't sure if I was messing with him. Had we both been hearing things? Come on down, and we'll get started, I said. We put the incident out of mind while we laid out our materials, but the second we set up the tall ladder, I got the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. We planted the base out in the yard and carefully lowered the rubber grips against the siding at the top of the turret. Are you sure you want to do this part first? Marco asked. Absolutely. Knock out the tricky stuff while we're still fresh. More daylight, I reasoned. Before the ghosts know we're here? Marco cocked an eyebrow. Oh, knock it off. If you're so brave, why don't you go up there? He held out a green wire lined with large, brightly colored bulbs. I snatched the cord from his hand. You'd better hold the ladder tight, you big baby. With every rung I climbed, my confidence shrank a little. The ladder seemed to bounce in time with my steps, flexing under my weight over the long span. Of course, I knew this was normal. I'd lost count of the number of homes I'd worked on. Why did this one feel so different, though? Halfway to the top, my hands began to shake from the anticipation. I was actually expecting something terrible to happen. I wiped my sweaty palms on my work jacket and pressed upward. Near the top of the turret, I passed the home's highest window. Out the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the gap between the curtains. Dumont was probably taking a peek at our progress. I ignored the window and set to work. We'd already attached plastic clips to each bulb back in the shop. All I had to do was pop them onto the edge of the roof. 3, 4, 5, I counted off under my breath as I attached the plastic clips. It didn't take long to reach as far as I could in either direction. With the size of the turret, we'd probably need to reposition a handful of times. This would be time-consuming and annoying to say the least. Over the top of the gutter, there was a small lip with a gradual slope, before the roof angled sharply upwards. Just then, I started to think, if I looped a long safety harness around the tip, I could walk my way around and fix all the lights in only a minute or two. The ladder jerked backward, putting me several feet away from the safety of the roof. I clung to the rails, swore and leaned my body weight forward. My position didn't change. The ladder slowly moved further away from the building. Marco! My voice shook with fear. I didn't want to look down, but I could feel my center of gravity getting close to the point of no return. When the ladder stood vertical, the fall would be inevitable. "Oh, hang on," Marco's voice called out. But why did it sound so far away? I chanced to glance at the ground and saw my assistant sprinting back towards me from the truck. Was he out of his mind? He left the ladder unattended. He was fired. No questions about it. I would fire him for this if I survived. The top of the ladder jumped back towards the building, almost shaking me loose in the process. As I pulled myself tight against the bars, my gaze fell on the ground once more. There was another man below me, digging in his heels as he tried to pull the ladder back towards the house. I knew right away that this wasn't Marco. The man wore blue coveralls and a dandelion yellow ball cap stained with flecks of paint. "I've got you, don't move." As soon as Marco took hold of the side rails, the stranger started to climb up the underside, adding his weight to mine and pulling me closer to the house. I swung within range and dangled the strand of lights. I reached out, wrapped the cord around my wrist, and started to tug. The extra pull seemed to be just what we needed. The gutters inched closer as the ladder started to lean in the right direction again, back towards safety. Plastic snapped as 1, 2, as 1, 2. Then 3 of the clips broke free. I wrestled with the wires and tugged again, closer. Another clip popped off. "Help!" Marco yelled. Was he losing his grip? I was so close to the side of the house, and the window. Was that open before? I asked myself. "Chuck, I'm slipping." Getting down alive would mean doing something risky. "Marco, hold the left side of the ladder," I called out. I let go of the lights and shuffled towards the window. I lifted my foot off the rung, extended my leg, and touched the sill with the tip of my toe. I could make it. I shuffled further, reaching my left hand off the ladder and grabbing the upper edge of the window frame. Almost there. My second foot couldn't quite reach the window, not while I still held on to the ladder. I gritted my teeth and let go of the rung. The rotted wood gave way a little. My hands scrambled for something sturdier to grab, settling on the curtain rod. Once my fingers wrapped around the wood, I pulled myself into the room. Without my weight, the ladder sprang away from the siding, toppled backwards, and came crashing down right through the truck's windshield. "Chuck?" I stuck my head out the window. "I'm fine. What the hell was so important you needed to go back to the truck?" "You told me you anchored in. Sent me back to the truck for more bulbs." "No, I didn't," I told him. He looked up at me with genuine confusion. I heard you." Was he for real? I thought back to the voice I'd heard from the side yard. He must have been hearing things again, and this time it had almost gotten me killed. "Where'd the other guy go?" I asked. "Who?" Again, he asked in real confusion. "Hang on, I'll be right down." The musty room smelled like it hadn't been aired out in decades. I could practically taste the cigarette smoke, and the curtains, wallpaper, and linens hanging from the ornate sleigh-style bed all bore pale brown nicotine stains. Dust coated every surface, rising from the carpet with every step I took towards the door. The handle turned, but it wouldn't budge. I returned to the window and called back down to Marco. "Feels like something's blocking the door. Can you get up here, please?" It wound up taking him 5 minutes just to convince the widower to let him up to the 4th floor, and twice as long to let Marco remove the boarded-up barricade that was keeping me inside the old bedroom. "What about a rope? Tie it to the bed maybe and lower yourself down," he suggested through the door. "Please, just don't make me open it." It took threatening to call the police to get him to cave, and the longer I stayed in the room, the more I understood why. The pool of sunlight filtering through the window shifted, revealing a dark stain on the carpet. The pointed corner of the dresser bore a similar mark, though it was much harder to make out in the dark mahogany. My mind raced. Could that be blood? It was either that or just wine. Judging by the boards on the door, I guessed there was a good chance someone had really died in this room. When the door opened, I finally pushed past Dumont, grabbed Marco by the front of his jacket, and pulled his face within inches of mine. I should shove you out that window, you half-wit. You don't leave someone like that. Chuck, you sent me back to the truck. I thought you were safe, I swear. You could have used your eyes. If it hadn't been for the other guy... Wait, what other guy do you keep talking about? Marco asked. Dumont pushed us apart with a degree of strength that didn't match his pale frame. This isn't his fault. It's mine. Mine and Mary's. He led us down the hall to a black and white wedding photograph. Didn't take much imagination to see the man was a younger Dumont. The woman could have been a movie star. She had a gorgeous face, framed by long curly hair. That's Mary, Dumont said. She always was a pretty girl. Always told so. And, well, that can do things to a young lady's head. Do you know what I mean? Do I ever, Marco muttered. I just nodded. Mary fancied herself the center of attention. Always assumed people were looking at her, even when maybe they weren't. I knew plenty about that too, but I bit my tongue. Billy was a family friend. A roofer himself. Came by to fix a leak up on the turret. I guess Mary forgot or didn't know. She was changing and must have seen Billy through the curtains, gotten startled, and he trailed off and motioned back to the room. She bled out before we could get help. Now I understood the reluctance to open the door. Sir, I'm sorry. It was a lifetime ago. He let out a labored sigh. I'm certain Billy wasn't leering or anything like that, but I can't say the same for Mary. She always had a vengeful streak. I don't follow, I said. Billy came back to finish the job for free. Wouldn't take my money and wouldn't hear anything else. His way of showing how sorry he was, I suppose. I left to grab them lunch. When I got back, he swallowed hard. I'll never forget how Billy looked. Laying on the pavement. Men on the ground swore they saw someone lean out the window and push him away from the ladder. I thought back to the man I saw pulling the ladder back into the safe direction from the ground. I don't suppose Billy was wearing a yellow cap and coveralls when he died, was he? Dumont's eyes widened. How did you know? I think he just saved my life. I refused that man's money and politely explained to him that we could no longer service his home. Yes, I expected as much. There was a resigned kind of sadness in his voice when we left him in the foyer. We loaded up our gear before heading to the property line to wait for our tow. Neither of us wanted to stand any closer to the house than we had to. When the truck finally arrived, I looked back up at the window one last time. The sash was still up, leaving smoke-stained curtains free to dance in the December breeze. Someone was standing there, staring down at me. A woman with golden hair, stained black on one side and matted against her head. Then I blinked. The window closed and she was gone.